I don't usually enjoy firing people, but this particular day was an exception. I was actually looking forward to it. If anyone ever deserved to be let go, it was these two, and I was more than happy to fulfill that. The first was Gloria Blodgett. Gloria was a graphic artist I had brought on to manage the decorating department in our small plastics company. This department handled the creation of signs, banners, balloons, and all kinds of plastic decorations and party supplies. During the interview, Gloria made it very clear that she identified as both a feminist and a lesbian. Neither of these things bothered me in the slightest. In fact, I welcomed her feminism, and a person's sexual orientation should never affect their employment, which is a belief we strongly upheld in our company. It's a private matter that remains with the individual. However, Gloria also made it clear that she wasn't particularly interested in the job. Her spouse was quite wealthy, and they lived in a mansion located in the city's most prestigious and expensive neighborhood. This gave me pause. I didn't want to hire someone who might leave us high and dry when things got busy. But Gloria was highly qualified, had glowing recommendations, and a wealth of experience. Despite my reservations, I decided to take a chance and hire her. In the first few months, her work was outstanding. She was efficient, proactive, and the department ran smoothly under her leadership. The only downside was the complaints I began to receive from her team. Gloria constantly berated the staff with radical feminist rants, which irritated the women and infuriated the men, most of whom were less educated and worked in production. I spoke to her, telling her that it was inappropriate to force her personal beliefs on others during work hours. Afterward, she confined her opinions to the break room and lunchtime, though employees continued to complain. I couldn't do much more than suggest they avoid her during breaks. Right after Gloria's probationary period ended and I fully handed over the reins of the department to her, the complaints started pouring in. One of our new products was a gender reveal balloon package. When triggered, the package would burst open, releasing either blue or pink balloons. Gloria, however, decided to add purple balloons as an option for those who didn't want to assign traditional genders to their children. When I found out, I pointed out that the kind of people who would appreciate that would never order a gendered party to begin with, so it wasn't necessary. She launched into a diatribe about woke culture, but I figured since we didn't have to actually produce purple balloon packages, I'd let it slide. Things took a worse turn when complaints about the gender reveal kit started coming in. It turned out that the blue balloons had loser written on them. Upon investigating, I found out that Gloria had ordered them that way. When I confronted her, she initially claimed the order was for a bachelor party, which had been cancelled, and that the balloons must have accidentally been used for the gender reveal kits. Then I asked why the pink balloons were labeled winner. She stammered before saying, "Well, where there are losers, there must be winners too." I sent her home while I calculated the damage her antics had caused us. I also spent the rest of the day scrambling to replace all the unopened kits. The financial loss was bad enough, but the hit to our reputation was immeasurable. The next morning, I called her and the HR manager into my office and, without any preamble, fired Gloria on the spot without severance. She was livid. "Those people with blue balloons are losers," she screamed at me. "Nobody wants you, you male scum," she ranted as she stormed out. The HR manager was left speechless. Later, when I told the rest of her department about her dismissal, they all nodded in agreement and even applauded. I hadn't realized things had gotten that bad. Next up was Stephen Wingate, and I'll admit, I was actually looking forward to this one. Stephen had been a thorn in my side for quite some time. My personal assistant was Marcy, a 23-year-old who was petite, beautiful, and incredibly competent. She was a gem among the staff. Steve, one of our IT guys, seemed to think he was God's gift to women and wouldn't stop harassing her. It got to the point where Marcy was in tears, begging me to make him stop. I warned Steve that if he didn't cut it out, it would be considered harassment and grounds for dismissal. As he left my office, it was clear he wasn't taking my warning seriously. He decided to take it a step further by finding a picture of a couple in a compromising position, then photoshopping Marcy's and my faces onto it using our company photo. He emailed it to the entire staff from his company account, suggesting that Marcy was popular because we were having fun. The Photoshop job was horrendous, the shadows were off, and the resolution of the faces didn't match the rest of the image. No one believed it was real, but that didn't make it any less serious. It was blatant sexual harassment, and I was furious. Security brought Steve to my office, where the HR manager cut him his final paycheck and escorted him out of the building. I didn't trust myself to speak to him directly. I was afraid I'd make the situation worse and end up in jail. My wife, Julie, is extremely jealous, especially when it comes to Marcy. Even though there's nothing going on, I asked a few trusted friends not to mention the photo to her. Julie tends to believe where there's smoke, there's fire, and I didn't want to deal with the fallout if she ever saw that picture. Julie and I had our usual Friday date night planned, but as the weekend approached, she told me she wasn't feeling well and suggested we postpone it to Saturday night. She even hinted that we might try something new in the bedroom, which certainly got my attention. I agreed, not giving it much thought. On Saturday, she sent me off to play golf, saying she wanted to make a special dinner for our evening together and didn't want me around getting in the way. We kissed, cuddled, and she playfully squeezed my rear, promising fun things later that night. When I got home, she hurried me upstairs to shower while she set the table and finished up dinner. I shaved, showered again, and put on some aftershave, feeling excited about the night ahead. Julie had truly outdone herself with dinner, a gorgeous 3-bone roast, mixed vegetables, and potatoes for the main course, followed by tiramisu and coffee for dessert. She even brought out a bottle of my favorite port wine. After a few glasses of port, I started feeling unusually drowsy. Julie doesn't drink port, but I didn't think much of it at the time. I tried to stay awake, but it was a losing battle. Slowly, I started to regain consciousness, only to find myself locked in some kind of padded room. I was bent at an odd angle, with my back almost straight and something supporting me under my ribcage. Additionally, my lips were pried apart, and some kind of gag was shoved into my mouth. "Oh, you're finally awake. I thought you were going to miss the main event," Julie said, smiling down at me. I tried to respond, but all I could manage were grunts and drooling. She held a photoshopped image up close to my face. "I knew you'd recognize that," she said as I grunted and drooled again, now in panic. It was hard to believe this poorly done Photoshop was ever real, but wait, the version she showed me was different. The shadows and pixels had been corrected. Stephen and Gloria had told her I fired them because they were about to inform her that I stole Marcy from Steve, and that we sent this picture to mock him. They claimed I kept a copy of the photo to use against her in case of a divorce. Flames of rage practically shot from her eyes. Gloria had been the one to doctor the image. She and Steve were getting their revenge. In hindsight, I realized not telling Julie about the photo had been a huge mistake. I tried to mutter something, but it was useless. I saw that Julie was wearing some new sexy lingerie. Behind her, I noticed Steve lying naked on my bed. My eyes widened, and Julie saw it. "I told you I was going to try something new in the bedroom. You've been wanting this for years, and Steve volunteered to take my virginity," she said with a smirk. Steve gave me a sly grin from behind her. "I even set up a camera so we can share this with everyone," she added. I spotted the video camera on a tripod near the bedroom door, and tears began streaming down my face as Steve started kissing and caressing Julie. "Oh, that was better than I ever imagined," Julie said, running her hands over Steve's chest. "We should do this more often," she added before turning her gaze to me. "But don't worry, love, I haven't forgotten about you. I can tell how much you're enjoying the show," she teased. "Come on in, boys." Gloria entered the room, leading 3 naked black men. "Look at him," Steve laughed, pointing at me. "He loves it," he said, while Julie and Gloria burst into laughter. Somewhere in the midst of it all, I blacked out. How long they had their way with me or how many times they did it, I had no idea. When I woke up, I was sore all over, and my mouth was filled with what I could only assume were the remnants of their actions. Gloria and the black men were gone, leaving only Steve and Julie behind. Julie stood in front of me, giggling. "I thought we could go for another round," she said as she moved behind me. I passed out again. When I regained consciousness, Steve was unfastening the straps that had held me down. I got to my feet, struggling to stand on my wobbly legs. As Steve walked back towards Julie, who was sitting on the bed smiling, he glanced over his shoulder and said, "I bet you're feeling pretty powerful now, boss." In a fit of rage, I grabbed a large bottle of perfume from Julie's dresser and brought it crashing down on Steve's skull. He dropped like a stone. Julie's smile faded as she watched in shock, her eyes wide with fear as I limped over to the bed and swung the bottle at her head while she lay naked. My mind raced. I knew I had to get out of there before Steve regained consciousness. I wasn't in any condition to take them on again. Assuming there was no one else in the house, I grabbed my pants, car keys, and the video camera before attempting to walk down the stairs. Instead, I ended up sitting and sliding down, leaving a bloody trail on the carpet. Stumbling outside, I reached my car, tossed the camera into the back seat, and drove a few blocks before pulling over to put on my pants. The seat was stained with blood, and for some reason, that made me break down into tears again. After a few minutes of sobbing, I started the engine and drove straight to the emergency room. I left my car in the ambulance lane and limped inside. A nurse approached, and I asked her for help and to call the police. She led me to a bed, and soon after, a police officer arrived. He was already at the hospital. While a doctor examined me, I explained everything that had happened to the officer. "There's a video camera in my car outside," I told him. "It recorded the whole thing. You need to secure it." He went to retrieve it. Meanwhile, a patrol car was sent to my house, where they found Julie and Steve still unconscious. They were arrested and taken to the hospital to be checked for injuries. By that time, I had been anesthetized and was rushed into surgery for my injuries. Epilogue: Julie, Steve, and Gloria were arrested for drugging me, holding me captive, physically and sexually assaulting me, and conspiring to commit these crimes. The 3 black men turned out to be gay friends of Gloria and her wife, who thought it was all just a prank against an abusive husband. Lawyers advised me to file lawsuits against everyone involved. I agreed, targeting Gloria and 2 of the black men, both of whom, like Gloria, lived in upscale neighborhoods and had deep pockets. The 3rd man was middle class, so I wouldn't get much from him. I also filed for divorce from Julie, leveraging her actions to claim nearly all of our marital assets. The judge required that $50,000 be set aside for Julie's support when she's released from prison, if she ever is, in 85 years. I didn't sue Steve, though. He had a wife and a young daughter, and I didn't think they should suffer for his actions. I spoke with his wife and told her I wouldn't sue if she divorced him and took his assets. It turned out she was already planning to do just that. I visited the prisons where Julie, Steve, Gloria, and the black men were held, not to see them, but to meet with their cellmates. Using the settlement money I had received, I arranged to transfer $100 a week to their accounts in exchange for ensuring my abusers would be assaulted at least once a week. They could either do it themselves or hire other inmates, it didn't matter to me. I also arranged for Julie's cellmate, who happened to be an extremely angry bull lesbian, to introduce her to the joys of hardcore sex 3 times a week, offering an additional $25 for her trouble. Julie's cellmate had hands twice the size of hers, so I imagine she'll get more pleasure than I ever did from our marriage. It's going to be quite an interesting prison experience for her. On the bright side, aside from the settlement money lasting me a lifetime, Marcy visited me every day while I recovered in the hospital, holding my hand. It turns out my wife's jealousy wasn't entirely unfounded.